Hi, I'm Taylor, and I'm just going to be combining the save functionality of GitHub into Visual Studio and just walking through how to do that on a Linux machine. So to begin, just to briefly go over both of those software, or both the software that I was talking about, GitHub and Visual Studio. Visual Studio is probably one of the best was probably one of the best code editors available. It's lightweight, it's modifiable, and best of all, it's free. The second one is GitHub, which this is like a main service that coders use to store their code and info on to a cloud. Obviously, with the cloud coming out, you really don't want your information being just saved on like a USB stick where it could get lost, or on your computer where maybe it could get corrupted somehow. So the cloud is the safest way, and GitHub provides that very well. Best of all, this is free as well. Both of these obviously just combined make a lot better of a coding experience. So the first thing you're going to want to do is create a GitHub account if you haven't done that already. And if you haven't, go and work on that now. So just pause the video and then you can continue. But the second part of it is we're going to install Visual Studio and GitHub. So the first part that I do want to go over, just to make sure that there's no changes, is I am running on Linux Mint 21.1, so that all of the Despian flavors, though, should have pretty similar look and feel to it. So I don't think it should play out very differently, just as long as you're on a Debian type Linux software or Linux operating system. So what you're going to do is first download Linux Visual Studio Code, and luckily you can just type this into Google. It should be one of the first results, and then it's just going to be this .deb file. So I've got mine in downloads right now. Mint and several other Debian flavors have this great option of just in the GUI, you can go into downloads, right click, and then click open with the package installer. It's going to be a little bit of a difference for the package installer for each, but it's the same concept. You right click and then installer. That's the easiest way for me. The next easiest, actually, we are going to want to open the terminal for Linux, but this makes it easier because it's installed right into our computer, and it saves all of the paths for us. So luckily, we don't have to worry about this little pesky thing called paths. This just takes care of it for us. Your first time opening up Visual Studio, you obviously just want as little struggle as possible. So with that, what you're going to do is just sudo apt install and then git, so git. And for me, it just says it's already at the newest version. For you, it's probably going to prompt you to click yes or no, and it might already have it. So once you have both of those downloaded, what you want to do is open up Visual Studio. And on Visual Studio, I'm just going to go over some of the basics here. So extensions are what's going to be installed as like a code editor. So each of these act as a different code editor. So it could be for Java, for Python, different types of things. There's also applications that just make life a little bit easier. I took a class where we were able to see our web application by simply clicking a button. So that made it a lot easier. Instead of having to type in the code and refresh the page, it just gave us a free little page that we could look at the web page. So that's what extensions do. They're little applets there, and they're editors for specific languages. Run and debug basically do what it says. It's going to debug your code. Debugging just means that it says like, hey, that's not supposed to go there. Running, you just run the code. It'll whatever your code will do. And then source control, we're going to get to this later, but this is how we're going to use GitHub. This is the easiest in graphical use for getting to GitHub in Visual Studio Code. Search function is going to just search for different words, and then you're going to be able to replace them. Very powerful, very useful. It has this within these little tabs up here as well. Here, let's see. So yeah, all of these right here. So Control Shift F. So you can also get those up there. And then Explore is what we're going to use to open our folder on the computer. So this looks for folders and documents on our computer that we can start editing with the code editor. Clone repository we might be able to use later, but right now we just need to get GitHub set up. But first thing is first, I want to make a file. So what I'm going to do is I would encourage you to follow along with this if you're new. Create a new folder. And you want to avoid spaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do hello world. And what we can do, even though this is blank, I'm going to click open folder. Then click open. And right there, it shows a blank folder, just like I have. It'll be the same if you click in, it has documents, it will show up in here. But what we're going to do is create two new files. The first one is going to be our first code. It's going to be hello world.py. So obviously this extension .py is going to matter quite a bit. That's what's going to determine that it's a Python file. And then we're going to open another one. And this one is important to GitHub. So we're going to create something called a readme.md file. The Python code up, you can just briefly look at that. The syntax is going to be the #, a space, and then hello world. And then I just put down, I'm learning Python. So that's just something that I wanted to learn with you guys. So this is what the readme.md is going to look for, just a really simple project like this. The second part of that is the hello world.py. So we obviously created this message. It says print and then the hello world. So to just briefly go over the code, print means to just output to the terminal, which is going to be down here. And the hello world is just going to be what we want in that terminal. So in the terminal, we do need to make sure that we specify what we want in there. So we can't just not have parentheses because it doesn't know what to put. So the parentheses helps this just send a simple message instead of trying to send something else. So what you're going to do is just type that out. And what it should do is when we run and debug is it should output that. So it just went through my Python extension, if you saw that, and then it sent out in the terminal hello world. Now the second step is to sign in to GitHub. So I'm going to click sign in. So usually what you would do is sign in and sync settings. And that's, I think I clicked that. Yeah. And I am already signed in. So, but what it'll take you to is just a GitHub page. It'll take you first to two different options, GitHub or Microsoft. Obviously click GitHub, and then sign in with your GitHub account that you've created. And once you signed in, it's going to give you your profile name right here. So mine is Taylor 3042. And then it has in parentheses GitHub. Obviously the sign out is right there. So if you do want to sign out at any point, you can click that. But let's go over how we're going to publish this into GitHub. So let's go to the source control that I was talking about. And the first thing we're going to want to click is initialize repository. So this doesn't have a repository. Repositories are just like your kind of like your folders for the code. The repository is like a project. So obviously you want to separate out into projects, and you don't want to create mass GUI multi-project folder. So what we're going to do is click initialize repository, and it gives us this little button called commit. So this button commit, what it's going to do is this actually pushes our code out, or not pushes, but it sends our code out into the cloud that we're saving it to. Why there's a commit button is because there is an option to sync on the go. It'll probably give you the option at the bottom right. You can also mess around with settings later. But what it does is, or why it has it this way where it's not instantly saving, is because let's say you're working on a major project, obviously not just print hello world, but a bigger project. It saves those commits, and you can see, okay, so this code worked and now it didn't. So something I changed in between these doesn't work. GitHub is really good at logging these changes. So you're going to be able to look through and see those changes and see what you can do to change that. But what we're going to do, and I hope this goes correctly. All right, perfect. I think that is exactly the problem that I wanted. So what should happen if you press commit is get author identity unknown. It might give you a slightly different error, but just because I had to reset mine. But this is what you're going to do. So I clicked on open git log, or git log, and it gives us what went wrong right here. And this is really useful too if you have any other problems that you're working on right now. This is really good at kind of enumerating, is what they call it, in the terminal to show you what's going on exactly. So what went on exactly is the author identity is unknown. It says right here, please tell me who you are. So apparently I didn't do this. I did earlier, but obviously I just needed to sign out to demonstrate this. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this. And there's another part of this called the terminal. So the terminal opens up exactly like where you would if you were to open this up in the terminal on your computer, which is what it is doing. So we're going to right click on here, open in terminal, exact same thing. So, but the terminal is just a really nice tool, again, in Visual Studio that just offers ways where you don't have to do that. You can just go into this tab, terminal. So what we're going to do is we're going to paste this code. Obviously, what you're going to want to do too is change your @email.com to your personal email. So I'm just going to do that right now. Oh, oops. All right, and then we want to put in the second command that it gave us. So your name. So your name doesn't actually mean your name. It just does mean your username, just in case you were wondering. So what we're going to do is do the same thing. Username on my GitHub is Taylor3042, as I said. Whoops. And then if you hit enter and nothing pops up, that means that it should have worked. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to commit again. So let's click commit. And it worked. If it gives you this message, that means it worked. So what this is it's going to show you a commit edit message right here. So before you even save to the cloud, it says, hey, here's what we're doing. So it says changes to be committed. Obviously, these are the files that it's saving that are new. And then it says on branch main. For now, we don't need to really get into what branches are. But all you need to know if you're starting to code is that if you're on the main branch, you're on the correct one. The initial commit, so the first one, and then at the top it says, please enter a commit message for your changes. Line starting with this will be ignored. So the pound sign will be ignored, and an empty message aborts the commit. So what a lot of people will probably do is they'll just try to do this, and it won't work. You do need a commit message, and it can be as simple as this. Just first commit, and then just click this check mark right here. Click save. And then the last thing we're going to do is click publish branch. And then if you hover over it, the same thing, public branch main, that's what we're on right now. That's the only one you need to worry about right now. We're going to click publish branch. The extension GitHub wants to sign in using GitHub. Obviously, click allow. All right, so right now it's trying to authorize, and it authorized. So it's saying, all right, so now that we authorized all of that, do you want this to be private or public? So obviously it's up to you where you want that to be. If you're wanting a more public one, which is what I'm going to do, I'm going to click public. All right, so this is what it looks like just on my normal desktop, the main Linux desktop that I have. So I just pulled that up. And the readme.md will show up right below your repository. I just did that by clicking on your profile or my profile, and then the 3 lines. You can see the repositories right here. You can click show more because I have a few different ones. So we'll click hello world, and that's what it shows me. The pound sign in the space created the title for hello world. And then below that, just my small text, I'm learning Python, just shows what this project's about. The next part about that is just the hello world.py. So if you see that, it copied exactly what I needed it to, right here in GitHub. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below and I can try to help as best as I can. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.